Hey, for Tuesday, September 8th, 2020, this is the Pro and Con Show. Yes, I'm your host, Michael James Ott. Welcome to the show, as always. Welcome. So, point of the show, trying to encourage us to be better citizens, to focus on the who, the what, the where, and when, make our own decisions based on those facts, turn our backs to all of these screaming heads and stuff that are giving us all their opinion and propaganda, and most certainly listening to opposing views, especially understanding how people arrived at, what was your walk in life that got you to where you are today? What was it? And understanding that because you got where you are today by your walk in life, and you did not experience everything in this world. I guarantee you did not. And that other person did not as well. And then when you start exchanging those experiences, you're going to find that, there would be a different viewpoint on this because your experience was different than mine and mine was different than yours. But now that both of those, if we accept that both of those experiences were real, that makes things different. And maybe there's a different path forward for us together. Anyway, today's show is called Vote. Okay, so pandemic. Frankly, especially one of the demographic groups that votes the most is actually people older, okay? People like my age, I'm almost 60 years old. People, in that 40, 50, 60, 70-year-old kind of age range are much more likely to vote than younger folks or much older folks, either one. But the problem with the novel coronavirus out there and the devilish way in which it kind of spreads amongst us and stuff like that is actually going to the polls on November 3rd is there will be some risk, more than zero, even if you're careful, even if you put on a mask, even if you keep distance. Now, if you do those things, and for sure, if you're going to vote on November 3rd, please do those things. Please, please, please put on a mask. Keep distance from other people. Sanitize your hands frequently. Actually, if you were to wear some kind of eyewear, that would be even better. Or face shield, that would be even better. Those kinds of things. Anything you can do to either minimize if you happen to be contagious and don't know it, or if someone else is there contagious and does or does not know it, having those barriers between you over whatever distance is going to make everyone a lot safer. So if that happens on November 3rd, if you're going to go vote on November 3rd, please do those safe things. But a lot of us would say, hey, if there's an alternative, we should take those alternatives. And there are, thank goodness. Okay, so this originally, years ago, there was this thing, absentee ballot, and it was used a lot by like military people because there's no way, they couldn't fly from Germany back home and put in their vote and then go back, right? But yet they should be allowed to vote. I mean, they're this small percentage. I was one of, former military person, this small percentage of people that volunteer to protect the rest of us. Well, by God, you should let them vote, right? I mean, come on. So absentee ballots, and then, okay, there's other excuses of, physically unable to get to the polls and things like that. But what's happened over time is that people have realized more and more, and in fact, in some states, the voting is all by, if you will, absentee ballot. The only difference is that you used to, ask for an absentee ballot, you used to have to have an excuse like, oh, I'm in the military, or I'm physically unable to get to the polls. These kinds of, so there's a laundry list of excuses that you had to pick from why you would be allowed to vote via mail-in vote. But these days, it's become more and more clear that it's safe and effective and non-fraudulent, the opposite of fraudulent, which I'm having a senior moment and not thinking what that word is, but there you go. But it's accurate and effective, and so do it more. And so I found this article, and I just wanted to. This is from the Washington Post, and it basically says, here's the picture. They show a fellow sticking an envelope in the mail, and the title of the article, and so you can look this up, right? I don't get this, I don't make it up or whatever. How to make sure your vote counts in November. So it was in the Washington Post and still readily available on the internet. You can Google it, or use one of the other search engines, but you'll find it, okay? So there's a handful of points here. So you want to make sure your vote counts, and please make sure your vote counts. And I'll be absolutely honest with you. And again, not politically motivated, nothing to do with Republican versus Democrat, nothing to do with policy. But Mr. Trump cannot be reelected president for myriad reasons, and I've provided them in the past, but he's, we cannot reelect him. So especially if you are going to vote not for Mr. Trump, but for Mr. Biden or somebody else, hopefully for Mr. Biden, because really he's the only other in our system. He's the other candidate. So a vote for Biden is a double vote against Trump, basically. So vote, okay? Especially if you're not going to vote for Mr. Trump, vote, please. And again, nothing to do with political stuff, nothing to do with policy. Mr. Trump is, and those of you that are his followers, I know this may anger you, me saying these things, but you will see within months or years, you're going to see exactly why this fellow has hoodooed you. He's hoodwinked you into believing some things that you think he's doing for you that he's simply not doing. He's just doing things for himself. That's the Donald Trump way. But anyway, so here's the thing. So make sure you're registered to vote, and you need to be active on this. There's only, I think it maybe is even less than 50 days until the election at this point, but it's right at that. So definitely less than 2 months, just a few weeks. Make sure you're registered to vote. Make sure you're registered to vote, okay? And then in the vast majority of areas around the country, it's a very safe way to receive a ballot. So you go to your county clerk, they'll have, very often they have an online thing where you can request. And so I'll describe what happened here in the state of Wisconsin. I live in Hudson, Wisconsin. And I took a picture of my driver license, and I had to submit that along with my request for mail-in ballots. And then the county clerk looked at that, took that information, took that image, stored it, and validated that I, based on county records and stuff, I live where I live, and the driver's license says that that's my address and so on. So they sent me a ballot. And then when I voted, and then you put it in an envelope and you sign, and then here in Wisconsin, you have another individual, a witness, that just signs and says, yes, I didn't watch, and I didn't see what he marked on the ballot, but he marked the ballot, he put it in this envelope, he sealed it, and I watched him do that. And then it goes back to then you have to make sure that you put it in the mail or at a drop-off location, and then the clerk actually starts comparing the information. Like they'll look at your signature on the envelope and they'll compare it to the signatures that they have on file from your driver license and other locations. And then that's another check that they do, and then there's this witness also if they have a concern. But anyway, so number one, register to vote. Number two, get, especially if you aren't going to vote in person, get on the internet or call the clerk's office or whatever, but get your ballot by mail on the way to you. Do it today. Okay? And number three, if your state isn't going to mail out the ballots, then request one soon or go pick one up or whatever. Unfortunately, it varies some. So that's the thing is I can tell you what happens in the state of Wisconsin, but the other states are different. So you need to be proactive and figure out what they need. Number four, fill out the ballot and make sure you follow the instructions. Okay. So the instructions are going to say fill in the little circles or whatever, do it in a certain way, use certain inks, black ink pens, or whatever it says, but make sure you follow it. And they'll give, it's not hard, it's not rocket science, but make sure you do what it says. Okay? And this includes using the envelope that it comes with to mail it back. This is all, that whole thing, that kit, if you will, is the way that they make sure that there isn't a fraudulent vote. Okay? Number five, then you've got your sealed envelope, you've done whatever on the outside, and then send it back immediately. So put it in the mail right away, or there's drop boxes. And for example, here in Hudson, Wisconsin, there's outside City Hall, there's a drop box, and you can go and drop this stuff in there. So make sure that you do it. And they're saying that it could take up to a week for the mail to carry this. So for sure, do it and put it in the mail at least a week before November 3rd. Okay, that's October 26th or whatever it is. Make sure you put your ballot in the mail or in the drop box, and make sure it's there before Election Day. And again, if you're going to trust the mail, make sure that you mail it at least a week ahead of November 3rd. And then if you're not going to vote by mail, then early voting is an option in many, many locations. Again, unfortunately, not uniform. And what the rules are for voting, early voting, and when you're available and how you do it or whatever, that varies. But for example, they say here, Texas is one of 7 states that's not allowing absentee voting, but it has expanded early voting by 6 in-person locations by 6 more days. So again, it's different around the country. Figure it out. And if you're not going to do the ballot thing, then do the early vote thing, because that's much smaller crowds, much more convenient, much more likely that you're going to get your vote counted. And then, yes, you can, of course, vote in person on November 3rd. And you're welcome to do that. But be advised, it's going to be a long process. There's going to be extra time because the extra spacing and stuff like that. It's going to be kind of a mess on Election Day. So allow extra time. If you can, go ahead and take the day off of work or whatever, and just allot the entire day to voting. And then the last thing that it says here is manage your expectations for when the actual results will come in. Because of the pandemic, because of all the different things that are going on, it's very likely that there's going to be several states that they won't be able to say which way the election went in the various states for several days. 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, 7 days in some cases. And so it could easily be, and it's not an indication of fraud. It's not, although I'm sure that Mr. Trump, especially if the numbers as they come in show that he's losing, I'm sure he'll claim that it's, immigrants attacking the southern border with their ballots and causing, the ballot count in South Carolina to take time or whatever. I mean, whatever. But it is going to take extra time. We almost certainly, unless Mr. Biden, again, it's looking like he's going to win as opposed to Mr. Trump, but unless Mr. Biden wins in just this colossal landslide, which is probably not going to happen, it's going to take 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, 6 days before we know who's going to be the next president of the United States. Okay, vote, especially if you're, and again, I'll say it again, not politically motivated, Democrat, Republican, don't care, policy, conservative, liberal, don't care. Mr. Trump cannot be president of the United States again. So especially if you are not going to vote for Mr. Trump, make sure you vote. There's not a more important thing that you could do. All right, so for the Pro and Con Show, I'm your host, Michael James Ott. Until the next show, bye for now.